Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's actually the next day. So you just saw that footage that I just went through of me attempting to undo these bushings that had seized on my sway bar. Now, basically last night my camera batteries died, I ran out of memory card, and I took that as the sign that I needed to stop for the day and let that thing sit in some penetrator for the night. My hammering has left some lovely marks on my floor right there. I'm not too concerned. Either way, we're gonna pull it back out and get working on it. Okay, so the very first thing we're gonna be doing today is this guy right here. So you'll notice we still have, this right here is the last seized bushing on there, as well as this washer right here. So we're gonna heat this up. I have a MAP gas can. Usually we just have a propane can, but that's fine. Either way, we're gonna heat this up after it's been sitting in penetrator overnight and see if we can get it a little bit more loose. We got this spinning now, which is kind of where we left off yesterday. It does seem to have made some progress. We're gonna keep hammering here for another minute and see if we can just get this guy to move. Whew. It worked. I cannot even begin to tell you how happy I am that that just worked. Now I've got a couple other problems, like a big old washer right here. It's supposed to be circular, but I can get around that problem. That's not hard. But this guy right there is finally off. Wow. And I have the hole in the concrete to prove it. Woo! And probably half a tank of MAP gas. Sorry, MAP gas. Little lisp right there, but whatever. Okay, we are going to continue on. We're gonna clean up this thing really quick, a little bit, and then get moving. Okay, so this is the next fun little project. So this is under the hood, and this is that weird steering system I'm talking about. So this tie rod right here is in here, just kind of into its little slot right there. Where this light is pointing, this guy right here, right where he's pointing, there's a nut with kind of some yellow paint on it. That's the inside of this tie rod, because if you look, it kind of comes out that hole right there and goes right up to there. Well, I haven't been able to get that thing to thread in, so we're gonna work on that. Like, it's kind of difficult to show you guys, but I'm gonna do my best to see if I can show you, while I'm working on it. Okay, so a little update. So, if you look right there, you see that little yellow nut right there? Yep. So that is a stabilizer bar that goes across the car on the steering rack to here. It's that black thing right there with the Audi logo on it. Well, it's pushing the rack that way. And what that's causing to do is it's causing that hole to be slightly misaligned. So, I'm currently taking off the yellow nut right there and trying to figure out what we can do. Okay, that was a bit of a fight, but you can kind of see right there. It's kind of a little bit difficult to see, but there you go. That's that arm off. So now all of this crap right here, it's all super loose, which is what I was looking for. And that way that will enable us to hopefully get that little bolt right there in. Yeah, see? That one right there. Yep. Good news, as you can see from the, little battle scar on my face. I finally got in that steering, and there is both the bolts right there in front of you. Well, basically what ended up kind of transpiring is they bolt through that front plate into that tie rod and then into the rack behind it. So there's like basically 4 things you have to line up, from the front of that plate to the tie rod to the back of the plate to the actual bolt where the hole goes, where the thing goes into. Well, I ended up having to take off that steering damper like I showed you. That's kind of just resting over there. And just a ton of maneuvering around to finally get those bolts to go into the right holes. But anyways, it's done. We're gonna torque those down and then get moved on to the next step. So now that we got that all bolted together, I've got the damper back on that I took off, which was a pain in the ass in and of itself, as well as the 2 tie rod ends. Now we're gonna start working on the front suspension. So here we are yet again with a view of the front suspension. So as we went over before, it's already attached in up top. The tie rod will be one of the last things that we connect. But first thing, we're going to get these control arms into the bottom, down there. And that involves a little trickery in and of itself. So one of the funny things about these control arms is they are the rear subframe mounts as well, which, you know, this whole suspension design is just so weird compared to almost anything else that Audi even created later. So we're gonna kind of get this going, get him up in there, get his pinch bolt on, and then we'll kind of go from there. Okay, so that one's in. Now we gotta figure out the other one. I also gotta make sure I put them in the right direction. But hey, you live and you learn, right? So now we've got both these sets of bushings on right there. There, we're gonna start loading this onto the car. We're gonna go one end in and then the other end in and kind of just slowly work it in. Okay, now we got both of these guys inserted in here. If you can focus on this. Yep, so we got this end inserted in. As well as this end. They're looking pretty good. Everything looks normal so far. So now, 2 things have to happen simultaneously. So this bar bolts into where those 2 bolts are right there, and clamps down with one of these C-clamps. Seems easy enough, but what happens, because this acts as the front control arm of this car, is you have to pull the bar forward at the same time as trying to get it up there. So it ends up getting a little interesting, we'll say. So we're gonna see how this goes. Okay, so I've got all the brake calipers on, and this is how I'm going to get it into position. I've got a ratchet strap tied to the little truck right there that's kind of hard to see, but I'm just gonna strap it up a couple times, and it's yanking him right into place. So we're gonna continue with that. Now I did want to kind of interrupt this for just a moment. I know I've just been kind of going a little ham and just getting things done. The reason that this jack is here is a lot of these bolts, like control arm bolts and steering bolts, like I just did, sometimes are sensitive to position. So, wherever you clamp it down is where it's going to, act as that's where center is. So obviously you want it centered when the weight of the vehicle is on the hub, not when it's down here. So that's why this is here. So now we'll go ahead and lower this down. And call it good like that. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever this third installment of this video may find you. It's I, Justin, and I have a little bit of interesting news. Me being a novice on this suspension, I actually reversed these control arms. Now, they could have been avoided. I also gotta make sure I put them in the right direction. But hey, you live and you learn, right? Normally that's not a problem, depending on how the suspension is designed, but these control arms are very easy to get backwards, as they only have a slight bend. But long story short, these control arms aren't marked, and so therefore after we took them out of the box, it was kind of a 50-50 shot as to if they were correct, and they're not, because the front axle was sitting forward by about 1.5 inches. So we're going to be taking the entire suspension back apart, because that's not the only issue. The other issue is the springs. When I looked on the website, they're H&R Springs, which is a decently reputable brand. For some reason, and I was already doubting this putting them together, as you probably saw, they basically said, and I quote, to put the coils that are facing closer together up, which doesn't make sense if you've ever dealt with progressive springs, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt, and it was very incorrect. It definitely rides very low on the shocks because of that. So, we're going to correct that. We're going to flip those back around to their proper orientation, flip the control arms back around, and I got some new hardware. Pretty gnarly difference. So a quick update, I had somebody stop by to give me spacers. It's obviously pitch black now. It's a few hours later. I got the other side done, and I'm currently in the process of doing the driver's side right now. So, I know it's kind of dark, but here's where we're at. So, same thing we're doing, swapping the spring, swapping the control arm, etc., etc. Literally the same process. So we're just gonna go through this, and I'll kind of update you guys when we're done. Okay, we're back for another day. We ran into another snag, but I've got the parts for it now. As you can see, the shirt and hat has changed. So obviously, it's now the next day. So we got this side, the passenger side, completely done. Spring is all flipped around. Caliper's on right, and the new spacers are on, which, I'm not hugely thrilled about it, but they're what I have right now to get the car moving, as the wheels are significantly deeper and wider than the old ones, and the offset's not quite right. And then if we come to the other side, we'll notice the brake caliper is a little bit, kind of forward. Well, the caliper pin, the guide that goes right here, is all stripped out, and so I had to spend some time this morning finding a new one. Luckily I still got the bolts right here, and we're going to get that all put back together and moving. So this is going to go pretty quick. This is going to be towards the end of this video, just because there's no reason to show you guys things that you've already seen. So here we go. Welcome to the future, now brought to you by Exhibition of Speed. So, in that last clip, the very last thing you just saw was the car dropping on the ground. Now, at that point, it was running and driving for about a week. I got it a temp tag, I went and got emissions done, slightly failed it, so I started working on that. But in the meantime, I took it on a drive down to Nebo Loop with me and Gavin and a bunch of friends, and the car did fantastic. And then a couple days later, it decided it didn't need a functioning radiator anymore. So it went back on the project status. At this point, it's now back together again with a new radiator, a new fan clutch, a new thermostat, and a new belt, and, I'm actually going to take it on a drive today, and we'll see how it goes. So, that car's kind of always been my internal project car, and I love it dearly, but that's just kind of what it's been. Knock on wood that it actually lasts for the drive today. But, did just want to kind of give a little preface. It's kind of funny with that car being the way that it is, because it's always kind of ended up being my eternal project car. I've only put 9,000 miles on it in almost 4 years. That's low for anybody, let alone me, which that's very low for me. But the hope is that, me and Gavin may be able to do something with it in the future now. Maybe we'll do a little, driving video, because Gavin has never driven it in the proper, dialed form. Who knows? There's lots of stuff we can do with it. But in the meantime, stay tuned, because we do have a few things up and coming in the future. We have a very large shoot planned that will turn into a very cool project, and we'll release more updates on our social media as that goes. So to keep, following with us and to kind of keep touch with that, because it will be a big project, follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We've got our email, if you wanted to email us for whatever reason, mailbag.eos@gmail.com. If you know us personally, you can contact us personally. But either way, stay in touch. We still got weekly podcast episodes coming out, so please go and watch those. We've started to get into a pretty good rhythm with those. So tell your friends, tell your family, get everybody listening and watching that would be interested in doing so. And yeah, we'll see you next time. I've been Justin, and this has been Exhibition of Speed with my UrS6 as the star child of this. So take care.